the strategic advisor. Thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast. Let me go across to Professor Asanga first. Professor Asanga, we just learned that Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe has offered to resign. What do you have to say about that?
Well, he has to resign because of the irrational policy decisions he has taken in the last several days, appointing a casino boss to his cabinet, giving basically 1 day off for people to grow vegetables for taking from the work week. So there are multiple irrational decisions he also took. Apart from he reaching out to the international community, IMF, yes, those are really positive measures, but there were political favoritism that we see in cabinet. So people want the president out as well as the prime minister to resign. So the regime is no more. It's a historical moment in the Sri Lankan political history. I would call it an Arab Spring, clearly, because the people were against the autocratic rule, corruption, and the economic condition of the country.
Right, Professor Asanga, what next? If the Prime Minister and the President, if they both happen to resign, what next for Sri Lanka?
An all-party interim government needs to be immediately formed for a temporary period, and elections need to be held, because here is a situation you cannot have a prime minister or a president not elected by the people. So you can have an interim government for some time with all parties, but not for a long time, because people want to see new faces. Like I said earlier in this program, what the protesters want is to see a fresh beginning. So to have a restart on the political legislature and all that, so you would need to have elections.
Right. Let me get in Mr. Iqbal on this. So do you think this is the end game, Rajapaksa? Mr. Iqbal, if you can hear me, do you think it is end game, Rajapaksa?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. There is something wrong with the sound.
Right. Let me go across to Professor Asanga. So according to you, this is end game, Rajapaksa and plan?
It is definitely end game because of the repression and what they did to the people is unforgivable, which is the heavy militarization, 27 appointments in the military, as well as corruption, the rampant corruption, and also the inward and irrational ultra-nationalist policies they try to introduce. But then the president did ask for forgiveness, saying that he made multiple mistakes, but that was not good enough, because people have suffered. 16 people have already died waiting for fuel, and multiple warnings have been ignored from the international community, IMF, because of their inward policy prescription and the irrational decisions. So people's lives are at stake right now, and immediate. I think India has given 3.5 billion, which is amazing. I mean, one of the countries who step forward. But what we need is actually assistance from the international community right now to to move into a more democratic sort of a sustainable path, to have elections, have a functioning political regime, because without the political functionality, you cannot have the economic stability.
Right, Professor Asanga, we are talking about economic stability. So how much time do you think will it take for Sri Lanka's economy to really get back on track, or get some kind of normalcy at least?
Well, we have not even reached a staff level agreement with the IMF. So we even the debt sustainability program, which was promised in August, so we need to sort of draw that up. So all these measures have to be done. So for that, you need a functioning government. I would say 3 to 6 months for the IMF to come in with all these programs in, but then at least you need to have a functioning government, a multi-party government, satisfying the protesters. Here, this is the most important thing. I've been sort of saying this for the last 3 months. You need, because they are angry. And what they have done, the Rajapaksas have done to the general public, they are very angry with the regime. So you need to build trust. It's a matter of building trust, the legislature and all of the members of the legislature. So, I mean, it's a vulnerable and it is a failed state situation, unfortunately.
Right, Professor Asanga, who do you think could be the next contender as far as both those top posts are concerned? Who do you think can steer Sri Lanka out of this political and economic mess that it currently is in?
Well, according to the parliament, the majority, the next lot of majority belongs to the opposition leader. So that's how, because he has the most number of seats. Here you had a prime minister with one seat in the parliament who had power, so it's not legitimate again. So I think, Vikram Singh has said he would step down, so the president has stepped down. So I think the opposition leader, I would say, when you're looking at the parliament, the numbers as well as the seats, so he would be the next leader to take over.
Right, even if he takes over, in a scenario where he takes over, what sort of challenges does he face?
Well, he would have to gather all parties. You would have to have a consensus with all parties to work together to come out of the crisis, at least for the next 3 months, working with the IMF and the international community, and then immediately hold elections. And for the parliament can be dissolved, and you can hold elections and followed by the presidential election. So that will bring in political stability, which is necessary for this country. I mean, we have a huge debt portfolio to be managed. There are multiple systemic shocks within the country, so it has to be resolved. So I think the most prudent measure is to bring in political stability right now.
Right, Professor Asanga. We are talking about political stability, but also about in the interim. What sort of relief can the Sri Lankans really expect in terms of the food prices, in terms of rising inflation? What is in store for them? How much more are they going to suffer?
Well, right now the inflation is completely out of control. The former prime minister mentioned it is bankrupt. So it's a situation where there's no foreign reserves. So that's why I mentioned that you need to work with the IMF program immediately. So we haven't still reached a staff level agreement. So that has to be done. The macro level adjustments have to be done. So that it is a challenging time for Sri Lanka. That's why the international community, there were certain countries who mentioned on assisting Sri Lanka because of the political instability. Japan has mentioned that how do we? They were correct, because you can't assist or provide funds to a country which does not have stability. And if you look at the investment promotion minister questioning the prime minister a few days ago. So these are the issues. Internal dysfunctionality was very clear to even the donors. So I think once you have political stability, India, many other countries can reach out and stabilize, because instability in Sri Lanka will create a huge regional security threat also. Here is a very important geostrategic location in the Indian Ocean, so instability in Sri Lanka will directly impact India's security also.
Right, Professor Asanga. Let me also bring in Mr. Iqbal, who's back with us in the broadcast. Mr. Iqbal, talking about today, we saw some unprecedented scenes unfold in Sri Lanka with the protesters storming into the president's residence. So, what do you think is the immediate solution to a crisis of this magnitude?
Well, if I understand you correctly, I'm afraid the sound is still not very clear. Today, I would say is a very historic day, because number one, there was a very huge security presence, almost 10,000 of them from the troops as well as the police, who were deployed to guard the president's house, the president's office, and a number of other key installations in the city. The fact that the crowds of protesters were able to break through all this, enter the president's house, and there were unprecedented scenes there. Some of them slept on President Rajapaksa's bed. The others had a swim in a swimming pool. So there were many such things, and they were all taking selfies inside the president's house. Similarly, they also walked into the president's secretariat as well as Temple Trees, which was once the official residence of the Prime Minister.
Right, Mr. Iqbal, Mr. Asanga, thank you so much for joining us in the broadcast and sharing your views.